are back. I need to back up, I think just a little bit, because I think I said we would pick up around 115. If I didn't, good. I want to pick up around line 86. Okay? We've been told this is all part of what's called the prologue, about the first 114 lines of Beowulf. Okay, are generally referred to as the prologue. We were told in line 84, 85, right after Heorot has its great grand opening, that it's going to burn. I mean, it's like the ribbon's being cut, the doors are being thrown open, and the poet, the narrator, is standing off to the side and saying, and just wait, because this whole grand edifice is going to burn to the ground because of family warfare. Okay, we're told it's called the sword hate of sworn in-laws. Right? So, the poet then says, a bold demon who waited in darkness wretchedly suffered all the while. So, we have this idea of sword hate between in-laws. Okay? And then immediately juxtaposed with that is this idea of a bold demon. Okay? It's not a demon, a fallen angel. It means enemy in this context. Okay? Who is outside Heorot. We don't know how far outside Heorot. All we know is that Grendel is not part of Heorot. Grendel is not welcome inside Heorot. Okay? He's close enough to where he can hear the singing and the sound of the harp. He suffers from what? Look at 87, 88. He suffers from hearing the singing. He suffers from hearing what inside the hall? Joy. Joy. Celebration. Revelry. Okay? And then we're told, he who knew how to tell the ancient tale of the origin of men said that the Almighty created the earth. Who is he who knew how to tell this ancient tale? That's the Old English Shope, the singer of the tales. Okay? Shope means, modern English we call this poet. It's related to the same word, however, that gives us shape and shaper. Okay? One of the words for God in the Old English is shipend, shaper. Okay? The one who shapes things. So, the poet is telling us, the poet behind Beowulf is telling us that the poet in Heorot, okay, did what? Did what, man? It's too early for that. He sang of the origin of men. Okay? How the Almighty created the earth, a bright and shining plain. In the description, I think, there's no proof of this. Nobody has actually proven this in an article, though it has been discussed, that the Shope might be singing Cadman's hymn. Okay? What's he singing about? Creation. Okay? Thus this lordly people lived in joy, blessedly, until one began to work his foul crimes, a fiend from hell. Okay? Who's the lordly people? What are the people who live in Heorot called? They're not Herotians. Scyldings. Okay? They're Scyldings. They're Danes. Guard, Dana, Spear Danes. Variety of places they get called South Danes, East Danes, Shining Danes, Victory Danes. Okay? So, they live in joy, blessedly, until one began to work his foul crimes. One who? A fiend from hell, who's named Grendel. Okay? He's not literally from hell. How do we know? Because this grim spirit was called Grendel, mighty stalker of the marches. Okay? The Old English word there is merch stapa. It literally means mark or march stepper. What is a mark or march?
Walking on the feet.
No, that's what this part is. Not march as in somebody marching along. Right? This is usually translated today borders. Right? If you live in England, for example, the West Marches are the area on the border with Wales. Okay? In fact, if you were to look at that map that's in the back of your book, you know where you have England kind of looks like this. You come down the north coast and you have this big bumpy area that sticks out. That's East Anglia. And then you go in a little bit and you come out again and you come over here. You've got Cornwall. It goes up. Wales goes up, back up like this. Okay. This is East Anglia. This area over here is Mercia. This Mersh is related to that. Okay? It's the border, so to speak, between East Anglia and the Wales, the Welsh. Okay? So, Grendel, we're told, is a border stepper, a border walker. He walks in, what's another way to describe a border? Okay. Channeling Donald Trump. What else? I mean, think about, if you want to go political, think about Trump's language inside. What is a border? Does anybody live actually on a border? No. Why not?
It separates.
Okay. Think of it this way. Think of the ocean. You have, when you go to the beach, what do you have? Shore and water. Okay? But they're fluid. The water goes in, the water goes out, and water goes out, the shore gets bigger. Water comes in, the shore gets smaller. Okay? So it's this borderline area that nobody really inhabits. So, where's Grendel's home? It's obviously not Heorot. It's obviously not where the rest of the Danes live. We get told in a few moments, okay, where it is. He lives under a lake. Okay? The point is, he doesn't belong, does he? He doesn't belong, at least up here, with the Shope. Okay? Immigration problem, if you want to go there. So, the grim spirit was called Grendel, mighty stalker of the marches, who held the moors and fens. Held. That means he kind of rules the moors and fens. Why? It's like saying he rules the Okefenokee swamp. Anybody else want it? No, not really. This miserable, okay, now we're told he's a man. We've been told he's a fiend. We're told he's a spirit. We're told he's a demon. Now we're told he's a man. This miserable man lived for a time in the land of giants, after the Creator had condemned him among Cain's race. Okay, the Creator, the Old English there isn't actually Creator, 105. I believe it's Shippend. Yep. After the Shippend, okay, damned him essentially among Cain's race. Now the Old English actually, the manuscript, may or may not say Cain, because it looks like this. It's a funny looking A, and it's like that. Okay? The problem is, if I remember correctly, there's no ligature between these three what are called minims, just straight lines. Okay? To make that into an M, what do you have to do? Obviously. You connect it. Okay? Or you can do what? You connect this, and what does this become? An I. Okay? So it could either be Cain's race, C-A-M-E-S, or C-A-I-N-E-S. Problem is, Cain's isn't necessarily a recognized name, other than in like Cambridge, the town of Cam, which has a bridge, okay? But it does relate to an Old English word that comes from Latin. Campus, like the MTSU campus. What is a campus, though? It's just not a large area with leafy green trees. It's a place of battle. Okay? Place of conflict. So, among conflicts race? See, this is one interpretation one scholar has suggested. If we read what the manuscript actually says, because the manuscript doesn't have this, it actually has that. It does have an M, where if it's Cain, it should be an I and an M. And this scholar says, it's not a mistake. The poet is kind of being metaphorical. He is saying, Grendel is a descendant of conflict. So if you go back and say it's Cain, is he a descendant of conflict? Well, go back to your Bible 101 stories. What's Cain do? He kills his brother. Okay? Now go back for a moment to lines 84 and 85. So Grendel is a descendant of family warfare, fratricide. What's being talked about in 84 and 85? Family warfare. Okay? Start to see a pattern. When he killed Abel. That's what makes almost every editor say, oops, the scribe just made a mistake by putting that little ligature. Okay? When he, Cain, killed Abel, the eternal Lord avenged that death. Line 108 or so. Okay. How do I spell that? Okay. That death in the Old English is that feide. It's from this word that we get feud. So notice what Cain did to Abel. He opened a feud. Abel have any children? At that point, according to Genesis, we're not told. So there's nobody to do what? Think of the fourfold ethic. Duty to Lord, duty to kin, duty to avenge, Lord or kin. There's nobody human to avenge, other than Adam, to avenge that death. The Lord takes it upon himself. God comes down and avenges that death. Showing what? Oh, he's a good Anglo-Saxon God, you know. He follows that Anglo-Saxon code. Okay? So, we're immediately told, feud. We've not even gotten to the real poem yet. This is all prologue, remember. Okay? Feud, right there at the beginning. No joy in that feud. The Maker forced him far from mankind for his foul crime. That's Cain that's being talked about. Right? From thence, that is from Cain, arose all misbegotten things. Here's what those misbegotten things are in Old English. Okay? Thanan untridas, that is from thence, misbegotten things, all awoke. Here's what they are. Eotenes, Eotens. Modern English, giants. Okay? It's the same word for jutes in the Old English. On Ilva, elves. See, Anglo-Saxons didn't think of elves like Tolkien thinks of elves or like Shakespeare thinks of elves. They're not 6 foot tall, blonde, blue-eyed, Nordic looking, nor are they little beings that inhabit flowers, which is what Shakespeare does. Okay? On Orkneos, Tolkien's orcs, okay? Swilcha giant, gigantas. He uses two different words. The poet uses two different words for giants. Okay? One is a native Old English word. The other one comes through Old French, okay, but is ultimately of Latin derivation. Okay? So you have Etanos and Gigantus. Who what? Who strove against God for a long while. Okay? He gave them their reward for that. In other words, God paid them back. God got his requital. How? You got to jump up a little bit more in Genesis. The flood. There are two biblical events actually referred to in Beowulf. One, Cain killing Abel, and two, the flood. Okay? Which I'm going to qualify that statement about the flood when we get to that section of the poem. So, we get what's called the second fit. Okay? You can kind of think of the fits as chapters. But now, the poem begins in earnest. When night descended, he, that is Grendel, went to seek out the high house to see how the ringdanes had bedded down after their beer drinking. Notice the poet emphasizes. Grendel goes, when? Yeah. 2 points. At nighttime, after they're drunk. He's not stupid. Okay? He found therein a troop of nobles asleep after the feast. They knew no sorrow or human misery. Why did they know no sorrow or human misery? Because they are wasted. I mean, totally smashed. The unholy creature, grim and ravenous, was ready at once, ruthless and cruel, and took from their rest 30 things. Took from their rest doesn't mean he woke them up and made them go outside like a fire alarm. He deprived them of their meat seats. He killed them. Okay? Thence he went rejoicing in his booty. We should use a different word. Back to his home to seek out his abode with his fill of slaughter. Okay. The way we usually understand that is that Grendel ate these guys. All 30 of them. So how big is Grendel? He's a big guy. He's not Chris Hemsworth big. He's big guy. Okay? He's a descendant of Cain, but what else descends from Cain? Twice we're told giants. Okay? Some editors will translate that first word for giant, etanos, as trolls. Okay? So, when in the dim twilight, just before dawn, Grendel's warfare was made known to men, then lamentation was lifted up after the feasting, a great morning sound. That is, as the sun is just getting ready to rise, and somebody goes off to Heorot, they see the blood and gore that's left. Unhappy sat the mighty lord. This is Hrothgar, the long good nobleman. He suffered greatly. He grieved for his thanes, that is, he's sorry for the death of those men. Once they beheld that hostile one's attacks, the accursed spirit, that strife was too strong, loathsome, and long. So what does Hrothgar do once he discovers his men have died? His men have been murdered. Bingo. He sits and mourns. Okay? It was no long wait. How long was the wait? The next night. It's Litotes again. But the very next night, he committed a greater murder. Mourn not at all for his, and the poet uses that word again, for his feuds. Notice what Grendel has done. He's now opened up a feud. Okay? He was too fixed in them. Then it was easy to find a thane who sought his rest elsewhere, farther away. In other words, I don't think I'm going to sleep in Heorot tonight. I'm going to go to Motel 6 a little ways down the road. Or he's going to sleep in one of the outbuildings. Okay? When they pointed out, truly announced with clear tokens, that hall thane's hate. Who's that hall thane? They're talking about Grendel. But I thought Grendel wasn't a hall thane. Isn't that the problem? He wasn't invited to the party, so now he hates everybody and is going to kill them all. Talk about going postal on somebody, you know. Well, he's called that hall thing now. Why? Who lives in the hall at night? And only Grendel. Okay? So, he who escaped the fiend held himself afterwards farther away and safer. So he ruled. Grendel now rules Heorot, and strove against right, one against all, until empty stood the best of houses. Okay? During the day, Hrothgar and his guys go sit in the hall. Sun starts to go down. They look at their watches. They say, let's decamp. Let's sleep in the other building because Grendel is coming. And so it was for a great while. 12 winters. Okay. 12 winters. Grendel rules Hrothgar's hall. How long after Hrothgar's hall was erected and opened did Grendel come? Here, notice, we've not been told an exact time. Hrothgar is going to tell us later on, actually, how long they inhabited the hall before Grendel came. And it'll blow your mind if you've never read the poem before. Okay? And so it was for a great while, 12 long winters, that the Lord of the Scyldings suffered his grief, every sort of woe, great sorrow, when to the sons of men it became known, and carried abroad in sad tales that Grendel strove long with Hrothgar. Really? Is Grendel really striving with Hrothgar? Is really real striving going? No. Sun sets, Hrothgar leaves, Grendel comes. Sun rises, Grendel leaves, Hrothgar comes. That's not striving, that sounds like agreement. Okay? But notice what's happening now. Stories are being told, and the stories are leaving the land of the Danes. That Grendel strove along with Hrothgar, bore his hatred, sins and feuds for many seasons of perpetual conflict. He wanted no peace with any man of the Danish army, nor ceased his hatred, nor ceased his daily hatred, nor settled with money. What's he talking about? Weregild. Literally, man gold, or you could say man price. It was Anglo-Saxon law, even after the Christianization, that you kill somebody accidentally, you pay a price for them, depending upon their standing on the social ladder. A churl, the lowest level of society, the fine is not that great. A thane to the king, cabinet level officer, let's say, the price is much higher. A king, it's really high. Okay? So it's kind of a sliding scale depending upon your, for lack of a better way of putting it, usefulness in the social class or social strata. Okay? But Grendel wouldn't pay any fine. Grendel wouldn't agree to pay the weregild. Okay? Nor did any of the counselors need to expect bright compensation from the killer's hands. Okay? Your footnote talks to you about weregild. For the great ravager relentlessly stalked, a dark death shadow lurked and struck old and young alike, in perpetual night, held the misty moors. Men do not know whither such whispering demons wander about. And I kind of think that's the poet kind of trying to ramp up the fear factor for somebody listening to Grendel around the fire in the hall. You know, all the other noise in the hall has died down, so that everybody is listening to this guy. And he's probably standing in such a way that the flames from the fire are creating shadows on his face. Okay? Think of it, it's a campfire, a ghost tale. Thus the fall of mankind, fearsome and solitary, often committed as many crimes, cruel humiliations. He occupied Heorot, the jewel-adorned hall, in the dark nights. And then Lisa just does something completely that makes no sense. He saw no need to salute the throne. He scorned the treasures. He did not know their love. But at least he gives you a footnote. This is a much disputed passage. My reading follows a suggestion made by Fred Robinson in Why is Grendel not greeting the Gifsto Erech Mitchell? Okay? Here's what the Old English says there. Because you have to have this to see what he's really saying. Nothonehe Yifstu Greton Mosta. Okay. Malum formetana ne his minute wisa. This is the end. So, literally, not he that gift stool or throne to greet, or you could read that as to approach, was able, we'll put this one below, treasures, but it's a plural being used singularly, before God, not or nor his love knew. Literally, that's what those lines read. Okay? Look at what Liuza has done there. He saw no need to salute the throne. He scorned the treasures. What about this? Completely removed it. It's as if it's not even there. Okay? What treasures? Okay. Now look at this translation. He was not able. That's how these negatives work in Anglo-Saxon. Okay? Modern English, we put the negative right before the thing we're negating. They didn't in Old English. Okay? So, he was not able to approach that throne. Grendel was not able to come up to the throne. Treasures before God. What is this? This is in a positive phrase. What do you do in a positive? You restate something or you add information to it? Obama, comma, President of the United States, comma, said. Okay? So this is in a positive for what? For this. This is the treasure before God. Okay? Nor his love knew. What's the his? And there's a lot of scholarly debate about this. Tolkien disagrees entirely with my reading of this. Or let me rephrase it another way. I disagree entirely with Tolkien's reading of this. We never knew what Tolkien's reading of this was until his translation of Beowulf was published a couple of years ago. Okay? Because he never wrote about this passage. He thinks all of this stuff is kind of added in later. I think he's entirely wrong. This is central to the poem. Okay? Nor his love knew. That is, nor did Grendel know God's love. How do we know? Because Grendel is a descendant of Cain. And there is a feud between God and Cain. How do feuds work? Hatfields and McCoys. They go down the generations. Okay? So, What does that mean he was not able to approach the throne, the treasure before God? Think of this as the throne. Not a very nice one, but it'll do. That's the throne, the treasure before God. Why is a throne a treasure in God's eyes? Keep going.
Basically, if a leader is chosen by God, then like the seat of power is like.
Exactly. St. Paul says in Romans, every government, every ruler derives their authority from God. This, okay, is the authority. So why does God not allow Grendel to approach it? Because he's not approved. He doesn't get his authority. What's he trying to do? He's trying to take it. Okay? So what does it mean he was not able to approach? I think it means Grendel wanted to take that. He wanted to deprive Hrothgar of his mead seat. I think Grendel wanted to sit in that throne, and it's like he goes, bing, and he can't get close to it. He can't literally come near it. He's denied that. Okay? Why? Because he doesn't know God's love. So does Hrothgar know God's love? God has a funny way of showing it, right? Look what's happening to Hrothgar. For 12 years, every night, he has to leave the greatest hall the world has ever seen. Okay? He occupied Heorot, the jewel-adorned hall in the dark nights. He saw no need to salute the throne. He scorned the treasures. He did not know their love. Whose? The Danes? Well, duh. That's pretty obvious. Okay? That was deep misery to the Lord of the Danes, crushing his spirit. Many a strong man sat in secret council, considered advice. What would be best for the brave at heart to save themselves from the sudden attacks? The many strong men, this is talking about Hrothgar's what would be called his Witan, W-I-T-A-N, his circle of advisors. Okay? They sit, we're told, in silence and kind of think, well, how can we resolve this issue? How can we solve this problem? And we're told, lines 175 through 188. Many scholars, Tolkien included, think these aren't original to the poem. This is some Christian monk Christianizing the poem. This is some Christian monk trying to throw Jesus in the poem, so to speak, even though Jesus isn't mentioned. Okay? Look at what they say. I think they're completely wrong. I think these lines are central to what is going on in the poem. At times, they, who's the they? The strong men, that is, Hrothgar and his people. Okay? They offered honor to idols at pagan temples. Okay, the Old English word isn't pagan. The Old English word is heathen. Heathen. That's a much better word than pagan. Okay? Notice, by the way, what that word tells us. From the poet's perspective, if the poet is also a heathen, if the poet is not a Christian, then would the poet even have the mentality to use the word heathen? No, it only makes sense within a Christian context. Okay? So we have a Christian context that the poem is told in. So, at times they offered honor to idols at, I'm going to say, heathen temples. Prayed aloud that the soul slayer, your gloss tells you, i.e., the devil, okay, might offer assistance in the country's distress. So, notice what the poet is saying. Okay, But what else? Pagan temples or heathen temples implies they're praying to, okay, these are Germanic people. Odin, Thor, Wotan, possibly, Freya, could be. But the Christian poet says, no, who are they ultimately praying to? The Salabana, the killer of souls. Satan. To do what? That he would help them in their time of trouble, in their country's distress. Okay, so, how much does Satan really want to help them? If you're understanding the mind of Satan, it's like, okay, these people are going through hell. Good. That's good, Such was their custom, the hope of heathens. They remembered hell in their minds. How do you remember something? What does that imply? You've been there, you've experienced it before. So how did they remember hell in their minds? Have their minds been to hell before? Louder? Possibly.
The feeling that it's more like a backslide. They were Christian and then this happened and they're all that's not really
Okay, that's possible with this exception. There is no way these people could have been Christian, ever, because of the time frame. Scandinavia did not receive Christianity. Northern Germany did not receive Christianity until at least 800. Okay, the poem is set in the 6th century. England became Christian long before Britain became Christian, long before the rest of the Germanic countries. Iceland, for example, didn't accept Christianity until 1000 AD. And it was kind of the seat of the Viking power. Partially, Norway was more so. Norway became Christian after Iceland. Right? So, that they might offer assistance in the country's distress, that the soul slayer might. Such was their custom, the hope of heathens. They remembered hell in their minds. They did not know the Maker. They didn't know whom, the Shippend, the judge of deeds. They did not know the Lord God. Notice how the poet does that. The Maker, native Old English, this. But then the Maker gets in a positive phrase. The judge of deeds, what does that do? That takes us outside native Germanic mentality. Okay? According to the native Germanic mentality, the gods don't judge our deeds. There is no final judgment per se. Okay? And then uses the Heilig Drichten. Drichten is a word that's not normally used for a human Lord. It's for God. Okay? So, native Old English, native Germanic, just the maker, the ruler, the kind of power behind all things. Then, the judger of our deeds, and then the Lord God. Or, even how to praise the heavenly protector, the wielder of glory. So what's he saying? These poor literally damned fools. They didn't know God. And they don't know how to properly praise him. Woe unto him. What is that? We've seen this before. It's a gnomic passage. It's a proverb kind of a passage. Woe unto you. What? Who must thrust his soul through wicked force in the fire's embrace, expect no comfort, no way to change at all. Okay? What's he saying? Woe to him who doesn't know God? It's not what he said. Woe to him who what? Ultimately doesn't expect any comfort. Doesn't expect any change. So woe to him who does what? If you don't ever expect things to get better, you lose hope. Keep going. If you lose hope, then what do you have? What's another word for that? Despair. Despair. They reach out to Satan in what? Despair. Okay? So woe to him who despairs. A central teaching of the church at this time. Okay? If you despair, if you commit suicide, you are damned for all eternity. There is no chance, okay, for mercy. It shall be well for him. Okay? Literally, it's well bith tham. It'll be good for you. Who can what? Seek the Lord after his death day and find security in the Father's embrace. What I find so interesting about that passage is that adverb, after. When does he say the person seeks the Lord? After he dies. After he dies. What does, basic, average, let's say Southern Christianity essentially teach? Put it on a bumper sticker, turn or burn. What's the turn mean? When? Now. Why? Well, what happens? I'm going to become a Christian tomorrow. Yeah, but what happens if you die tonight? Too late. You're gone. All chance over. Okay? It's not what this poet is saying. Okay? This poet is saying, it shall be well for him who can seek the Lord after his death day. Now notice what he's doing. He's seeking. Seek is an active verb. It's not passive. It's not like sitting there watching this. Okay? It's seeking. So, in the case of those who are going to suffer woe, notice, they don't seek, do they? Why don't they seek? They don't expect anything to ever change. If you don't expect anything to ever change, what kind of motivation do you have to get up in the morning? Zip. Okay? So, many scholars read this whole passage as being an interpolation by a later Christian monk, that the original poem didn't have it. And they think this passage kind of Christianizes. I don't think so, and here's why. Because one of the most important passages in here is this line about change. They don't expect any change at all. We're going to hear Hrothgar say twice, I didn't expect any change to come. I didn't expect any change to come. We're going to hear his wife say, we didn't expect any change to come, and yet change came. Change didn't come all on its own. How did change come? In the form of a person, Beowulf. Okay? So, and notice, what will the person who seeks the Lord after his death day find?
Security.
How? In the Father's embrace. Notice it's the idea of these arms doing what? Reaching out. Okay? Reaching out, drawing in. With the sorrows of that time, the son of Halfdane seethed constantly. This is Hrothgar. What does it mean to seethe? Boiling. I mean, have you ever been seething mad? Somebody's done something to you, somebody said something to you, and you're just shaking? That's the kind of sorrow he has. Nor could the wise hero, what? Turn aside his woe. That's the change idea. Notice, he can't stop his sorrow. Why? Too great was the strife, long and loathsome, which befell that nation, violent, grim, cruel, greatest of night evils. But Hrothgar is supposed to be this great mighty warrior, right? He's so great and mighty, people from far and near donate to build this house. So how come he's not out there kicking Grendel, you know what? So, from his home, the Thane of Heorot, a good man among the Geats, heard of Grendel's deeds. This is Beowulf. He was of mankind, the strongest of might in those days of this life, noble and mighty. So what does Beowulf do? He orders a boat to be made ready. He's going to go down and help Hrothgar. Wise men, line 202, did not dissuade him at all from that journey. The poet is saying they encouraged him. Later on, the poet's going to say, Heorot is going to put in the mouth of Heorot, I tried to dissuade you. I didn't want you to go. And the poet's even going to say, the others didn't want you to go. So there's this weird disconnect. Like the poet is saying two different things. They can't both be true. Okay? So, Beowulf and his men get on their boat, and they sail off to the land of the Geats, line 229. The Scyldings' watchman sees them. That is, the Coast Guard. It's just one, by the way. He sees them, and notice what he sees. Here's these 15 men in a boat, well armed. They land on the shore, they pull the boat up, and then they start marching inland. He's like, what the hell? This is our land. Okay? What are you, line 237? Warriors and army, wearing coats of mail, who have come thus sailing over the sea road in a tall ship. Long have I been the coast ward and kept sea watch. He says, I've never seen anybody do this before. Never more openly have there ever come shield bearers here. It's not like they even tried to hide it. Like they're armed and they're wearing long cloaks covering everything. But he also points out one. He says, I've never seen a greater earl on earth than that one among you, a man in war gear. You know, when he says that, are the 15 men kind of looking at each other going, you talking about me?
No.
Okay. You've got 15. Let's say the 15 are like this. Where's Beowulf? He's up here. He probably stands, I don't know, a good 6 inches taller than the rest. Okay? He would be the Mr. Olympia among the group. That is no mere courtier. In other words, he's not a mere thane. He's not a hanger-on. Honored only in weapons, unless it looked to belie him his noble appearance. So he says, who are you? Tell me. So I've got to go tell Hrothgar that you're coming. And the eldest one, that's Beowulf, answers, says, we're men of the Geatish nation. He elects hearth companions. What's he mean by that? We sit at Heorot's table. Okay? That means they're in very close to the king of the Geats. They're not, people on the 4th and 5th table away from the hearth. My father was well known among men, a noble commander named Ecgtheow. Why doesn't Beowulf just say, hi, I'm Beowulf? He says, my father was a noble commander, well known. His name was Ecgtheow. What is that supposed to mean? The hearer is supposed to go, Ecgtheow's son. Nearly everyone throughout the world remembers him well. This is Beowulf's little rhetorical device of saying, you do know who Ecgtheow was, right? Okay? He says, we've come with a friendly heart to the son of Halfdan. Be of good counsel. We've got a great mission to that famous man. He says, we've heard about Grendel. I will try to help him. The watchman says, line 287, a sharp shield warrior must be a judge of both things, words and deeds, if he would think well. In other words, a good guard has got to be able to discern between words and deeds. What has he just heard from Beowulf? A lot of words. What kind of words? Good words, hopeful words, possibly helpful words. So what must he discern?
He's telling the truth.
Is it that he's telling the truth? Or that he can do what he says? It's Good speech. Think, political contest. Good speech. Can you do it? Can you do what you're saying you will do? And he says, I think you can. Go forth, bear your weapons, armor. I'll lead you the way. I'll leave behind somebody, kind of watch them. So they make their way. And as they make their way, we're told they go over at one point. Must be later. No, there it is. Fit 5, line 320. The road was stone paved. Right? This immediately becomes a problem, or should become a little problem. It's not major. This would be this is an anachronism. Why? Okay, where's the poem set? Modern day Denmark, the island of Zealand, between Denmark and Sweden. And yet they have stone paved roads. And it's the 6th century probably. Why is this an anachronism? Exactly. Romans built paved roads. The Romans were the first to really build paved roads. That's why they said all roads lead to Rome, because Rome built these massive roads. Why do they build these roads? So you can move men. You can move the army quickly. Okay? You know how our interstate highway system got built or got planned? It was because of Dwight D. Eisenhower in World War II being in Europe and going, oh my God, we can't move material. And he came back to the United States and said, there's not an easy way to get stuff from Omaha to LA. You got all these little dinky 2-lane roads. That's how the massive interstate highway system came into play. Right? So, there wouldn't be stone-paved roads on the island of Zealand. Okay? This is an anachronism. This is something that the poet who's creating the tale is familiar with. He's familiar with stone-paved roads. Why? Because he lives in Anglo-Saxon England, and there are stone-paved Roman roads. There are still, you can walk some of the Roman roads in England today. Okay? So they get there, and a proud warrior asks them, they get to Heorot, and a proud warrior at the door says, who are you, where are you from? He's essentially asking them for their credentials. Okay? He says, line 335, I'm herald and servant Hrothgar, never have I seen so many foreign men so fearless and bold. Beowulf says, we are Heolac's board companions. Beowulf is mi nama. Beowulf is my name. I wish to explain my errand, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, Wulfgar, the door warden, goes into Hrothgar and says, there's a bunch of men came from over the sea, they're from the gates. One of them's a guy named Beowulf. You heard of him? They want to talk with you. Hrothgar then speaks. I knew him when he was nothing but a boy. His old father was called Ecgtheow. We've already heard that, so that kind of confirms. To whom Hrethel the Gate gave in marriage his only daughter. Now his daring son has come here, sought a loyal friend. Okay? So Hrothgar says, I knew him when he was but a boy. When Beowulf was a Weisende. Weisende is knew him. This is all one word. This is a boy. A knicht, from which we get Middle English knicht, K-N-I-G-H-T. Originally, the meaning was boy, not knight. Right? So, being but a boy, sorry, it's not knew him. This is being but a boy, Hrothgar says he knew him. How old is Hrothgar? How old is Beowulf? We're going to find out how old Hrothgar is. We're never told how old Beowulf is. This to me is very intriguing. I've been doing some research to try to figure it out and haven't come up with an answer yet. So, he says, I've heard stories about Beowulf. Seafarers have said to me, those who brought to the Geats gift and money as thanks, that is, tribute, those who are afraid of me, they've brought stories that he has 30 men's strength in his hand grip. Okay, so there are stories about Beowulf already circulating. Holy God, in his grace, has guided him to us, to the West Danes. Where was Holy God earlier when these heathens were praying to the Soul Slayer? Where was Holy God in the last 12 years? Why does Hrothgar suddenly say, thank you, Jesus, for sending, or thank you, God, for sending Jesus, you know? Kind of what he's saying. To this good man I shall offer treasures for his true daring. He says, send him in. Okay. So Beowulf comes in. And he says, line 407, Was hel, Hrothgar. Was hel, be well. It's the word from which we get wassail, as in the Christmas carol, here we come a wassailing among the fields so green. Wassail literally means be well, be well. Wassail was a drink in the Middle Ages, kind of in honor of good health. Okay? Be well, Hrothgar. I'm Helak's kinsman and young retainer. Okay, so Beowulf tells us there he's young. What does young mean? What is age? You guys see all kind of memes on Facebook. Age is what? It's a state of mind, right? I mean, most of you guys are in your 20s. You're going to hit 29, and your 30th birthday is going to come, and you're thinking, the apocalypse is about to happen. Believe me, 30's nothing, okay? 50's really nothing. So, he says, I'm his young retainer. In my youth, I have done many glorious things. So, I'm young now. In my youth, when is that?
Long ago.
Is it not long ago?
Or maybe in his perspective it is.
This business with Grendel, he says, yeah, I've heard about this. He says, my people advised me, the best warriors, the wise men, they said, you ought to go help Hrothgar. Okay? Why? 4:18, because they knew of my strength. They themselves had seen me, blood-stained from battle, come from the fight. What fight? When I captured 5, we're not told what he captured. It might be giants that are referred to in the next half line. Slew a tribe of giants. Okay, so what is Beowulf admitting to? 21st century mentality. Genocide. This guy's a maniacal, sociopathic killer. Okay? And on the salt waves fought sea monsters by night. Survived that tight spot. Avenged the waiters' affliction. They asked for trouble. The they is not the waiters, his people. It's the sea monsters. They shouldn't have come bothering us. Okay? And crushed those grim foes. He says, and now I want to take on Grendel. He says, I have one request, just one. Let me alone. What is that? Oh, my own band of earls. Boy, I never noticed that typo before. And this hardy troop, cleanse Heorot. Let me alone. I think it should be or my own band of earls. Let us cleanse Heorot. And he goes on, notice, because I've heard Grendel doesn't use weapons, I'll fight him barehanded. Okay? Remember what the Wanderer says about making boasts without knowing how your heart's going to turn when the moment comes? Okay? Let 440. Let him put his faith in the Lord's judgment. Him who? Whom death takes. What does he mean? Let the Lord decide? Is this a medieval trial by combat and God will determine the victor? To some extent it is. What else is it though? Go back to lines 175 to 188. Well will it be for him who is able to seek out the Lord after his death day. Notice, let him put his faith in the Lord's judgment, whom death takes. He's saying, if I die, I'm going to trust in the Lord. I expect if he's allowed to win, he will eat unafraid the folk of the gates in that world. In other words, if Grendel wins, you guys are appetizers. You'll have no need to cover my head. Why? Because there won't be a head left. There won't be anything left. He will have it, glory, bloodstained, blah, 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 blah. He does say, however, if I am killed and anything remains, send what remains back to Helak. Let him have something to bury. Okay? Line 455. Especially this nice kind of mail coat. Why? Because it's the work of Wayland the smith. Who's Wayland? He's the Germanic version of Vulcan or Hephaistos, the smith god. He makes armor. He's saying, I have a piece of armor made by a god. Send this back to Helak if I die. Right? Weird always goes as it must. Put that in modern English. What will be, will be. He is resigned to letting fate take its role. Notice what he's not resigned to. How has Hrothgar been living the last 12 years? Sitting down, mourning. Is that letting fate take its way? What is Hrothgar not doing? Anything. He's not trying to do anything. Beowulf is suggesting you can turn fate. You can turn weird to your way. Okay? In fact, he's going to say later on something to the effect of, weird favors the man who acts. So, Hrothgar then speaks again. For past favors, my friend Beowulf, and for old deeds you have sought us out. Whoa, 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 whoa. What did Beowulf say was the reason he came?
Strong.
I'm strong. I've heard you have a Grendel problem. I'm a, pest destroyer. I'm a Grendel killer. I'm here to rid your hall of Grendel. Why has he come? From Beowulf's perspective. Out of the goodness of my heart. And because my men kind of encourage me. Okay? Does he say, I owe you a debt? Beowulf. No. Beowulf doesn't say that at all. But look at what Hrothgar then does. For past favors and for old deeds you have sought us out. What is Hrothgar doing? Bingo. He's saying, no. You're not here because of the kindness of your heart. You're here because you owe me. How so? Well, Hrothgar alluded to it when he said, I knew him when he was but a boy. He's going to fill in that information. Your father, Ecgtheow, whose name, by the way, Ecgtheow, means servant of the sword. That's a pretty cool name. Okay. Your father struck up the greatest of feuds when he killed Hrothgar by his own hand among the Wilvings. That is, notice, he started a feud. He killed Hrothgar. We don't know what among the Wilvings means. Hrothgar among could mean he killed Hrothgar as well as the Wilvings, or it could mean he killed Hrothgar of the Wilvings. The Wolfings, if you want. Sons of wolves. So these are pretty bad dudes to anger. And what happened? The Wader tribe would not harbor him for fear of war. That is, Ecgtheow's own people wouldn't allow him to come home. Why? Because he started a feud and they were afraid of the rest of the Wolfings coming and exacting vengeance. So he becomes an outcast. And where does he go? He goes to the land of the Danes, and Hrothgar welcomes him and pays the weregild. So when Hrothgar pays the weregild, according to Hrothgar's mind, he immediately puts Ecgtheow in debt to him. After all, he says, line 470, I settled that feud with fee money sent to the Wildings over the crest of the waves. He swore oaths to me. That is, your father swore oaths to me. Yeah, but Dad's dead. Yeah, try telling that to the IRS if your parents die with a massive tax debt. Guess what happens? That becomes your tax debt. Okay? Same thing with these oaths, these promises. It is a sorrow to my very soul to say to any man what Grendel has done to me, humiliated Heorot, blah, blah, blah. My whole troop, my warriors are decimated. Weird has swept them away to Grendel's terror. And then out of the blue, he utters this gnomic passage. God might easily put an end to the deeds of this mad enemy. It's true. If God is who God is, then he can kill Grendel easily. But for 12 years, he hasn't. What would any sane, rational person immediately do at that point? Give up on God? Okay, possible. What else might they do? Wouldn't you ask why? I mean, look at the book of Job. What does Job do? Why me? What kind of answer does God give him? Look at the frost. What? Look at the frost. Look at the snowstorm. Look at the tornado. Look at the whale. Look at the oceans. Look at the stars. And Job's like, okay, I get it. Okay? He says God could easily stop this problem. But he hasn't. Often men have boasted, drunk with beer, officers over the cups of ale, that they would abide in the beer hall. Grendel's attacked with a rush of sword terror. Notice when they make the boast. After they are drunk, flushed with beer. And what happens in the morning? They've got to go in with the hoses and clean the remains out. Okay? So he says, sit down, eat, drink. Do you really want the guy who's just promised to take out Grendel to get blitzed? Okay? And they clear a bench, they make it ready, and they start singing. And then Unferth comes forth. Unferth. Okay? The manuscript, every time his name shows up, reads this. Unferth. It has an H before it. Almost all editors, however, amend that to read Unferth. Why? Alliteration. The H doesn't alliterate in any of the passages that Unferth's name is. And so the editors say, well, the scribe just screwed up. Problem is that you're saying he screwed up every single time. Right? I think it probably is actually meant to be that, but it might be that it's not pronounced. Okay? Might be. So, Unferth, whose name means mar peace or unpeace. So what's another way of putting his name? Pot stirrer. What's opposite of peace? Conflict. War. Okay. Unferth, son of Ecgtheow, whose name means the leavings of the sword. Like you're filing your sword, you're getting it all nice and sharp. The leavings are the little iron sherds left over. Not as good a name as servant of the sword. Okay. He does what? He challenges Beowulf. This is an example of, probably it's an example, of what's called a flicking. A flicking comes from Old Norse. It's a challenge. In Old Norse sagas and such, we see somebody come in a room and he says, yeah, I'm a dragon killer, I'm going to. And somebody comes up and goes, show me your credentials. Prove it. And they do that by belittling the person, so that the person has to be quick on his feet and stand up and offer defense. That's what Unferth does. Unferth says, are you that Beowulf that we've heard stories of? Notice what stories. Not the guy who slew a tribe of giants, captured 5, killed sea monsters. But the guy who, in a youthful jest, challenged, or was challenged by, Brecca to a swimming match. Okay? Again, youthful. Beowulf has described himself as young. So are we talking last year? Or are we talking 10 years ago? Or are we talking 30 years ago? So what happened in the swimming match? According to Unferth, Brecca won. And so what does Beowulf do? He says, line 530. What a great deal, Unferth, my friend, drunk with beer, you have said about Brecca. Notice he gives Unferth an out about what he said. You're wasted, man. Shut up. Okay? He says, I'll tell you the truth. And for those of you old enough to remember Paul Harvey, this is, and now for the rest of the story. What's the rest of the story? What part of the story had Unferth not heard before? Yes, Brecca did get back before me. But why? Well, we've been out on the sea for 5 days and nights. Fully armed, that is, mailcoats, swords. What are we meant to assume at this point? No. They intentionally, they jumped in the ocean for a swimming match. With mail and with swords in hands. And they swam for 5 days and nights. Okay, where, first of all, is this? I can pull the map up. We're talking the Baltic Sea. This is not the Gulf of Mexico, folks. Yeah, 40 degrees. How quickly does a human body suffer hypothermia in an ocean that's pretty cold? Fast. That's why the people who survived the Titanic survived briefly. Okay? Your body temperature drops like a rock. He's out there 5 days. What are we meant to assume about Beowulf? Is he like us? He's superhuman. He's a Marvel character. Okay? I'm being serious here. He is not meant to be like us. The poet is telling us this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. In other words, once upon a time, we're in fantasy land. This is not meant to be historical. It's meant to be hysterical. Okay? So what did he do? We got separated, and sea monsters came after me. Probably because they're remembering their kin that he killed. And so he says that I got taken down to the bottom of the ocean because they wanted to feed on me. So I had to, kill them all. And he finally gets back up to the top of the ocean. He sees the sun. He sees, as he calls it, the sky candle, the sun. And he's washed ashore. Where is he washed ashore? Line 580. In the land of the Finns. Okay? Where is the land of the Finns compared to where he is? If you had that map, Sweden kind of comes down like this. The island of Zealand is over here. Denmark's over here. Beowulf, the Geats are down here. So I kind of assume they jumped here in the Baltic. Where are the Finns? Way the hell up here. It's like 500 miles away by ocean. Okay? He swam there. I've never heard a word about any such contest concerning you. Okay, so he's brought it down personal. Why? Because Unferth made it personal too. He says, hey, you couldn't defeat Brecca in a swimming match. How do you think you're going to beat Grendel? Okay? He says, moreover, in the play of battle, Brecca has never, nor you either, done a deed so bold and bearing with his decorated blade. I would never boast of it. Though you became your brother's killer, your next of kin. Beowulf just overstepped the bounds of the flitting rules. Because he accused Unferth of being what? Kinslayer, which takes us back where? Prologue, Cain and Abel. Okay. The source of all what? Feuds. The source of all feuds. Okay. He says this about Unferth. Who is Unferth? What is his position in this kingdom? Where does he sit? Literally. At the feet of Hrothgar. Okay? We're told he's Hrothgar's Thyrla. That means he's Hrothgar's official spokesman. Like Josh Earnest for the president. Usually you can't trust any word that comes out of an official spokesman's mouth. Okay? But he sits at Hrothgar's feet, which means he's close to the king. Okay, what are we being told? What is close to the king? A kinslayer. Hamlet famously says something what? Is rotten in the state of Denmark. Another famous phrase, the fish rots where? From the head down. Is this telling us something about Hrothgar's bad judgment? That he has a kinslayer as one of the most important people in his kingdom? Notice Beowulf doesn't stop with just calling him a kinslayer. He says, you became your brother's killer, your next of kin. For that, you needs must suffer punishment in hell. You're good, you're damned, Unferth. No matter how clever you are. He says, moreover, I will say it truly, son of Edgelaf, Grendel never would have worked such terror if your courage and spirit were as fierce as you yourself fancy they are. Ooh! If you were half the man you say you are, Grendel wouldn't be as bad as he is. But he doesn't stop there. Again, that's just going after Unferth. He has found he need fear no feud, no storm of swords from the victory shieldings. Okay, what does the phrase victory shieldings imply? That they don't lose, they always win, that they're victorious. And yet what's been happening for the last 12 frickin' years? Not very victory shielding-is. Okay? So what has he just done? Whoa! Talk about a slap. Okay? I think this is an example of Old English comedy, of Old English joking. This is Beowulf being sarcastic. I mean, look at that line again. He has found he need fear no feud, no storm of swords from the victory shieldings. No resistance at all from your nation. You guys are a bunch of panty wastes, in other words. He takes his toll, that is his count. He spares no one in the Danish nation, but indulges himself. He hacks and butchers and expects no battle from the spear Danes. It's like their spears are all 3-week-old pieces of celery. Limp. But I will show him, soon enough, the strength and courage of the Geats in war. In other words, you Danes, you're a bunch of wimps. We're going to show them what real men are like. Afterwards, let him who will go bravely to mead when the morning light of a new day, the sun clothed in glory, shines from the south on the sons of men. That is, and when I'm done with them, drink up, boys. Okay, what kind of speech has Beowulf just given? What do you think the other shielding spear warriors are thinking? Did he just say what I think he said? Did he just call me a limp-wristed, sissy boy? How does Hrothgar take the speech?
Yeah, man. Just don't do it.
Way to go, Beowulf! Yeah! I'll give you control of the hall. Okay? We'll stop there. So obviously we didn't get as far as we needed to. If we have a quiz on Tuesday, it'll be over the next set of lines, roughly from where we are to about 1383. Okay? If we have a quiz, I'm not saying we will.
Should we still do the reading that
Nah, just stick with this. Let's be realists. As of right now, that is when it is scheduled.